See, I've been watching for years how this goes, and what ends up happening is there's some public notice about a need, and then some boy hooks up a bid, and usually what it does is it involves some minor repair. You need your house fixed, your plumbing's got a problem, you need to get the car towed, something like that, and then you do that, or maybe you ping somebody to go to a job fair or apply for a job, and they submit an application. You get the whole process set up, and they end up doing these bids on these deals, right? Connected to the derivatives associated with all these other things that are actually very important for certain people, getting that job, getting that house repaired done. And then every once in a while you need something like, I don't know, massive, air transport of I don't know, mobile tents or some kind of structure that can be used to provide assistance that also has a connection with networks that have things like food and other kinds of supplies. Maybe what they call medical supplies, right? What they call some other kind of assistance. And the thing that ended up happening is a lot of times you're supposed to be able to go through a procurement process, and if you actually get to work with the military, like presumably you've got those contracts, right? I mean, because what kind of contract are you bidding on? Are you bidding on a contract to, I don't know, bioremediate? You got to go through the city. Are you bidding on a contract for some sort of 10-year outlay program connected to microchipping that is supposed to use some sort of medium, like perhaps what could be identified as an immunization or a vaccine, in order to engage that actual chip process and then have it hooked up to some systematology? It can be tracked, right? I mean, that's the kind of stuff you would bid on with the DoD, right? Okay, so what contract bid do I have to get a piece of in order to be able to take a account or a line and avail myself of this auction? See, because the problem is if I don't node like that in order to pay the kickback to the politician, then they're going to use the fact that I look at stuff like this and that I'm actually coming up with business plans like that. Do two things with it. A, they're going to steal it from me. But B, they're going to make a justification for stealing it from me by saying that somehow I've presented some sort of public safety risk, or I'm at some sort of threat associated with some allegation somebody made because I didn't give them the kickback. And this is what you've been telling me for years. I didn't give the kickback to the right person at the right time to get the insurance, so that when something comes up and there's absolutely a way to move on it, and there's actually possibly even people that are completely competent, and you might even have people that have a vested interest in that country or areas around that country, could have already developed their own local networks, but they didn't pay the kickback to the right guy at the right time. I'm looking right here. How many of these things could I actually, if I took my line, if you had paid me last week what you owed me for my LLC, would my LLC have already right now have been in a position to have been able to avail myself of this? How long would it take? Could I respond in 48 hours? Well, could I get the clearance in order to be able to get the actually over there? I mean, am I going to have to deal with people that might be armed? Well, presumably, didn't you just provide security? Didn't they just make a priority? Didn't they just spend the last year at a very high level of contract bid rigging connected to security companies, some of the world's largest private security companies? They like to couch their mergers and acquisitions and language associated with allusions to marriage and courtship. These models that are completely inappropriate. It's never appropriate for a private security company to use a form of consideration when it comes to merging with another private security company based upon an analogy associated with marriage, just so you know, right? It's completely inappropriate. But I'm sure by now you've already had your people apply appropriate standards, including in consideration of sexual harassment, including in consideration of other kinds of illegal activities, including human trafficking that may or may not require sex, by the way. And then, insofar as you've already been told for years, you were required by law to do these things. You already had your attorney engage with the other attorneys of concern and maybe go through whatever the judge or the jury was in the specific proceeding, or even if you had to do some sort of merger, You already know that whoever was involved in all of the processes of making that official, going through and verifying all of the information regarding your adherence to those laws, had let you know that trying to promote or market your activities as a form of courtship or marriage proposal was completely inappropriate. And so that's already been dealt with, right? But I'm sure that in the processes like that, when last year they spent a lot of time in very high stakes bids and competing paradigms associated with getting those very important private security contracts. Why? Because that uranium mine right now has the security they need in order to make sure that when we get to the places where those refugees are, they're already secured too. And nobody's going to be coming through and trying to get some of those people to maybe, I don't know, get some things that were offloaded from down the street. And then because of the chaos that's ensued, because nobody responded on time and appropriately, well, those people have no other option than to smuggle uranium. Right? No. You did everything you needed to do to make sure all of those private security personnel were not only monitored themselves, and not only held to high ethical standards where they would never ever be caught engaging in any inappropriate activity up to and including sexual activity associated with anybody for whom they're providing services. That includes watching pornography on their phone, right? That includes coming up with alleged security products that involve sexualized scenarios so they can run them using biometric accounts associated with the people getting services, right? You've already done all of that work. So all I need for you to do is to get off your ass and authorize the credit I've already accrued. Stop bleeding on me to try to frame somebody else into giving you a kickback so you can take drugs and distribute them instead of what people need, right? Are you concerned about the other things that can be done? Well, why did you spend billions and trillions of dollars over the last 25 years investing in those kind of paradigms at a higher level, right? Was it a qualitative factor? Are you concerned that if they have substandard equipment that they may not be as efficient as you are? And so what? That's going to skew your cost-benefit ratio when it comes to the percentage of the economy you invested in legalizing drugs? Well, I'm sorry about that. But the truth of the matter is that wasn't even the priority. And that wasn't even what was being sought. That was evidence that was acquired in consideration of a failure to deliver on what you promised you were doing when it was providing this, right? I mean, apparently, if you have your priorities correctly, I'm telling you right now, 10 shots, I could have it taken care of, at least in one's face, right? 48 hours, are you going to do the rest of the work? Or do we have to worry about giving kickbacks to those boys on the job that were expecting to get their pay off first before they do their job? I'm just saying. The track record with and for your local affiliates isn't really very good, is it? How much more compensation do the cops need? How much more fucking compensation do private security companies need? If they're just taking the compensation to give kickbacks to dirty politicians, we're not going to get anything done. And you'll let me know whether or not you understand what it means to be in a position where you expect to get paid for a job like that, because you're going to respond appropriately within 48 hours. It's 10:54 a.m. on August 31st, 2021. I'm in Dallas, Texas. There's absolutely no fucking excuse.